Okay, so we've been looking at percentages, and just to recap on a few points that we looked at last class, we know that the first point, a percentage is a number out of 100. So if you have any number out of 100, so in fraction form, it will be a percentage. And this symbol here, as you can see, has the two zeros, and we see the two zeros in our 100, and that line there could be the 1 or the vinculum. Now with the second point, to turn anything into a percentage, we have to multiply it by 100 and add the percentage symbol. And that point's very important because all you have to do to turn any number that is not a percentage into a percentage, just times it by 100. You use your fraction skills, simplify before you multiply, and of course you can use your calculator as a tool to assist you and to check your answer. So let's just try a few questions just to warm up. Have a go at these questions first and see how you go. Now, with the first one, we've got 1/8. So all we're going to do is follow that rule, times it by 100, and don't forget to add the percentage symbol. I'll just rub off these questions and rewrite them later. So I can just leave this to the end, but just make sure you don't forget to put it in your final answer. Now that 100 is really on top, so if it helps, it's really 100 over 1. And yes, you can use your calculator at this stage. Put it in your calculator and get an answer, but of course you have to show working out. So with your 8 and 100, we can simplify the 8 and the 100 because 8's on the bottom and 100's on top. So divide them both by, you can divide them both by 2, but I know a higher factor is divide them by 4. And we'll do that. So 8 divided by 4 is 2, 100 divided by 4 is 25. So I'm left with, well, 1 times 25 is 25, and 2 times 1 is 2. I'll bring this percentage symbol down so I don't forget it. And, oh, sorry, I should have a 2 there. Okay, now we don't leave our fraction like this. We can see it's an improper fraction, and 25 over 2 doesn't really make much sense. So I'm going to say, how many times can 2 fit into 25? Well, I know that 2 times 12 is 24, so it can fit in 12 times. Remainder 1 over 2. We know we keep the same denominator. And please don't forget to add this percentage symbol. And that makes more sense for me to say I've got 12.5% instead of 25 over 2%. And that's our final answer. So just remember, if your answer here is an improper fraction, please make sure you turn it into a mixed fraction. Okay, with this one here, some of you can probably work out what the answer is going to be, but we'll show it step by step because sometimes it's not so obvious. So 2 1/4, we can see it's a mixed fraction. And if you remember, whenever you see a mixed fraction, just turn it into an improper fraction. Okay, that's our first step. So 4 times 2 is 8, and 8 plus 1 is 9 over 4. We keep the same denominator. And now that I've got my improper fraction, to turn anything into a percentage, just times it by 100, or 100 over 1. And please don't forget to add this symbol at the end. Okay, so simplify before we multiply. 4 and 100 are both even numbers, and I know the highest factor I can divide them by is 4, and divided by 4. So 4 divided by 4 is just 1. 100 divided by 4, that is 25. And so I'm left with 9 times 25. I'll just write it out so we can see it clearly. So we've got 9 over 1 times 25 over 1. And it's now a percentage. We're just going to fix up our working out. So 9 times 25 is 225. 225, and please don't forget this symbol, percent. And that's our final answer. And we know that because 9 times 25 is 225, and 1 times 1 is 1, but that 1 can be invisible on the bottom. And so this percentage is past 100%, and it's getting, I guess, quite larger. And the last question for our warm-up, we've got 7 over 40, and we know to turn this into a percentage, times it by 100. Okay, simplify before we multiply. So that 100 is really over 1. I'll just put my symbol here to remind myself. Now, we know the trick. If you have a 0 on the bottom and top, you can just cross them off. 1 0 from the bottom and 1 0 from the top. That 0 still stays there because I have no more zeros on the bottom. By crossing off a 0, we're actually dividing by 10. So you can even write divide by 10 if that makes more sense to you. Now let's see what we have left. 7 over 4 times 100 over 1. And I can, 10 over 1. We got rid of that 100, sorry. So now I can continue simplifying because 4 and 10 are both even. So divide 4 by 2 and divide 10 by 2 because they're even numbers. 4 divided by 2 is just 2. 10 divided by 2 is 5. So we're left with 7 over 2 times 5 over 1. So 7 times 5 is 35 and 2 times 1 is 2. And this is now a percentage because we multiply by 100. But yes, we can see we have an improper fraction. We're going to turn it into a mixed fraction or a mixed percentage now. So how many times can 2 fit into 35? Well, I know 2 times 17 is 34. So it can fit in 17 times, remainder 1 over 2%. Don't forget that symbol. So we actually have 17.5%. So if you got 7 out of 40 for a spelling test, just say you had a big spelling test with 40 words, and that would be 17.5% out of 100%, which isn't the best result, but at least you got a few questions right. Okay, the next skill we will be looking at is converting percentages to fractions. Now, convert means to change. So it's like saying change the following percentages to fractions. So for example, if we have, before we start with a percentage, just say we have a half and we had to turn this into a percentage. So we know we times it by 100 over 1. Simplify before we multiply, divide by 2, that's 1. 100 divided by 2 is 50. And we end up with 1 times 50, which is just 50 over 1 or 50%. And we know that half of 100 of 100% will be 50%. So we could have worked it out mentally, but it's just to show some working out. Now, if we have 50%, so imagine that was the question the number we had to begin with. Because if you have a look at the question, it's asking us to convert the following percentages to fractions. So if I started off with 50% and I had to turn it back into a fraction, all we have to do is, we know that this symbol here means out of 100. So we really have 50 out of 100. And we know that line here means divide, but it can also mean out of. So 50 out of 100, I've now got my 50% written in fraction form. And I have actually changed it into a fraction, or converted it into a fraction. But does it look like a half, what I started off with initially? No, because we have to now simplify. So when you do this, you must make sure your fraction is in simplest form. And I can do this easily. I've got a 0 on top and 1 0 on the bottom. That's gone. So I'm left with 5 over 10. It still doesn't look like a half because I have to now divide the 5 and 10 by 5 because 5 is a factor of both. 5 divided by 5 is 1. There is my 1. And 10 divided by 5 is 2. And that's it. So to turn or convert a percentage into a fraction, you first get the percentage and now write it out of 100. Simplify the fraction if you can, and that's it. Okay, let's try this question here. We've got 160% and we want to turn it into a fraction. So we can remove our percentage symbol and then simplify our fraction. So once again, we know this symbol means out of 100. So we have 160 out of 100. And that's our first step. Can we simplify this fraction? Yes, we can. Got a 0 on top and a 0 on the bottom. I'm left with 16 over 10. And I can see that I have an improper fraction. So right at this stage, we can turn it into a mixed fraction, or you can continue simplifying. I'll just start turning it into a mixed fraction. So 10 into 16, I know it can fit once. remainder 6 over 10. But I'll keep simplifying my 6 and 10. I'll just write it here. So I'm left with 1. 6 and 10 are both even. Divide them both by 2. 6 divided by 2 is 3. And 10 divided by 2 is 5. And that would be my final answer. Now just remember, this is not a percentage. We started off with a percentage, 160%. And we turned it into a fraction and then simplified our fraction. And of course, if you have an improper fraction, you turn it into a mixed fraction. And we can see that a tip is, see how we had more than 100%, we had 160. That's why we've got a whole number 1. And that 1, whenever you see a 1, it's telling you it's 100%. Because 1 times 100, if you're going to turn it into a percentage, is actually 100%. So whenever you have a whole number, 1 or above, you know straight away you have 100% or more. Okay, our next question, we have 21%. So all we have to do to turn it into a fraction is write it as a fraction. 21 out of 100. Now check and see if we can simplify. Can we simplify this? No, 21's not even, and there's no factor of 21 and 100 that can be divided evenly. So we stop there. That's our final answer. And to make sense of this, the reason why we are turning percentages into fractions is to apply it to real life situations. So for example, just say I interviewed 100 people and 21 out of those 100 people don't have breakfast in the morning. So it's not a huge amount, but still it's quite a few people. 21 out of 100 people don't have breakfast. So as a percentage, it's 21%. As a fraction, dealing with actual figures and number of people, we have 21 out of 100 people. Okay, we'll try another one. 20%, we've got to convert this into a fraction. So once again, we know 20%, the symbol means 20 out of 100. That's our first step. And of course, simplify if you can. And yes, straight away, chop a 0 off, we can simplify this. We are left with 2 over 10. And because they're both even, well, just divide them by 2, divide them by 2, the 10 by 2. So we end up with 2 divided by 2 is 1, and 10 divided by 2 is 5. And there is my fraction. So imagine I said 20% of people don't have a shower every day. And if we wanted to know how many people that was, we simplified our fraction. So it was either 20 out of 100 people don't shower every day, or we could say 2 out of 10 people don't shower every day, or we could say 1 out of 5 people don't shower every day. Now, hopefully that isn't the case, but if you apply that to the amount of people in your classroom, have a look around and see, if you're in a classroom, how many people would that be in your classroom if 1 out of 5 people don't have a shower every day? Or we could say 20% of people don't have a shower every day. So try and work that out. Now, to sum up what we just covered, if you're more of a visual person, this might make sense to you. If we have a percentage and we want to turn it into a fraction, just follow the arrow, and that tells us all you have to do is write the number out of 100 and simplify. Or if you have a fraction and you want to turn it into a percentage, just times by 100%. So for example, if I had just say 20%, there's 20 and I had 20%, to turn it into a fraction, we write it out of 100, so we'd have 20 out of 100 and simplify. And we know that if we simplify this, like just before, chop our zeros off, we end up with 1 over 5. Okay, but if I had a fraction, so imagine my fraction was 1 over 5, just like here. So 1 out of 5. To turn that fraction into a percentage, to go backwards, just times 1 over 5 by 100%. So times it by 100, I'll just use this one here, over 1. And simplify before we multiply, divide by 5, and 100 divided by 5 is 20. And 1 times 20 is 20, and we add our symbol, and we get our 20%. So if you want to put this on a cue card, it sums up what we've covered, the 2 skills we've covered so far.